Thank you so much for inviting me to come and spend some time with Greta. It's been really a really great time so far. I've had so much fun working with the students here. And I also want to say thank you to everybody behind the scenes, the board, and everybody who contributes their time, effort, and resources to make this such a special program. It's a really wonderful thing. I gave a talk here in 2018, so 3 years ago, as Jay said. And in that first talk, I reviewed the trajectory of development in my work from student days to current work. It's kind of a survey talk. And if you haven't seen it, it's available for viewing on the Mount Gretna website. Today's talk is a continuation of that first talk. I've intentionally tried to not repeat myself. And today I'm going to talk about some of my major influences. And then I'm going to show a few images from my early 20s. I'm almost 50 now. I'll be 50 this year. And then I'll get into work that I've been making in the past 5 or 6 years. So I'm going to start with this image from a cave in southern France that was discovered in 1994. Imagine it's been carbon dated to between 30,000 and 37,000 years old. And it was there buried for most of, from the ancient Egyptians to now. Nobody knew it was there until 1994 when 3 French cave explorers discovered it. Can you imagine how that must have felt? To be exploring a cave and with your flashlight shine on something like this and have a feeling that it was made a long, long time ago. One of the things I often think about is the difference between painting as a human technology and technology. Nobody's walking around using Palm Pilot anymore, but in the 90s, Palm Pilots were popular, right? New technology makes old technology obsolete. But new painting makes old painting new again. I think about the person who made this. They didn't have a BFA. They didn't have an MFA. There were no art magazines, art museums, or galleries of critics. There was no ecosystem to support what they were doing. There were no art supply stores where they could go buy their paint and their charcoal. Whatever they were using, they had to make it themselves. Whatever the person who did this was thinking, we'll never know. But I imagine being in a dark cave, making a drawing or painting like that on an undulating, not flat, stone wall with firelight flickering. It must have felt like real magic. And I believe in the power and magic of their art. This painting is on a piece of lime wood, shaped, using encaustic paint. A person living in the part of Egypt called Fayum made this painting. And in Fayum, Egypt, between around the year 0 when the Romans conquered the Egyptians to around 300 to 400 AD, the Fayum painters were making portraits of people on shaped pieces of wood, usually lime wood, like this one, and caustic. And these were burial paintings. These paintings were not meant for museums or galleries or collectors. They were meant to be attached to the outer wrapping of a mummy. It would be attached over the face of the person wrapped, so that when you look at the outer casing of this wrapping around the corpse, you would recognize the person inside. A lot of love and attention went into these paintings, but they were meant to be buried. They were made for more mysterious and elemental reasons than I think most paintings are made today. And I look to that tradition in my own painting. This is a drawing that I made of Jay Noble. It doesn't look like Jay Noble. Sorry, Jay. You know, sometimes when you see somebody, you meet somebody for the first time, often they look like somebody you might recognize, a celebrity or somebody you've known in the past. Jay didn't necessarily look like anybody I recognized, but I recognized something about the feeling of hanging out with him. we felt like old friends. And I made this drawing of Jay on July 25th, 2018 at 10 p.m. We were sitting in a screened-in porch at 417 Yale Avenue, a short walk from here. I was here visiting Mount Gretna. And Megan Williamson was in the room with us. She was teaching a painting course at that time. And Jay's wife, Heidi, was there with us, and my partner, Anki, was there with us on the screened-in porch, and Jay's dog, Halo. Since about 1995, had the goal of making a drawing for every day that I've been alive. And as of today, I've been alive for 18,091 days. And I'm far behind, so I'm always trying to catch up. I always have my drawing books with me. I was drawing here before this talk. I'm always drawing. It's a deeply ingrained habit. This is my very good friend. His name is Ophir. Ophir and I were at Yale together in the late 90s. He was an undergraduate student. I was a graduate student. We became great friends when we were there. And I think I helped inspire painting for him. And he's a terrific painter now. He'll be here to speak, I believe, next Monday, July 12th. I made this drawing of Ophir on March 13th, 2015 at 11:30 p.m. in his apartment in Greenpoint, Brooklyn. His wife, Zabi, who was also a friend of mine in undergraduate school. I met both of them when we were at Yale together. Zabi and Ophir had made dinner that night and invited Anki and I to come because it was going to be one of their last nights in Greenpoint, Brooklyn before they moved to Pennsylvania. And this is my very dear friend, Stephanie Pierce, also a really terrific painter. This is a drawing I made of Stephanie on May 18th, 2018. I had gone to her apartment for the first time. She was living on Staten Island. I took the Staten Island ferry and made a drawing of the Statue of Liberty as I was crossing, and got to her apartment at around 8 p.m. or so. We had dinner. She made dinner for us. And then we looked at her paintings and her drawings, and she has crates, milk crates full of journals that she's been keeping since she was a kid. And we stayed up all night long, sitting on her bedroom floor, and she read to me from her journals. And she's as brilliant with words as she is with paint. And there was a shard of mirror that she had hanging on her wall, a broken piece of mirror that she had written on, "Every day wholehearted." And I wrote that on the lower left-hand corner of this drawing, "Every day wholehearted." And often, since I saw those words, I wake up in the morning and think that to myself, every day wholehearted. And some days, I'll just text Stephanie randomly, "Stephanie, every day wholehearted." And she'll often text back an emoji, like a thumbs up or a happy face or something. Stephanie's cat, Novi, you can see Novi in the drawing as well. And Stephanie will be here to speak, I believe, on July 26th. This is a self-portrait that I made. I was 22 years old. I was at the School of the Art Institute of Chicago. When I look back at these drawings, now I've made thousands of drawings. I don't know how many, but I've made a lot of drawings in my life. I mean, I draw almost every day, 2 or 3 drawings a day. And I've been doing it since around 1995. But I can look at any one of those drawings and I remember the day. I remember what I had for lunch that day. I remember I ate in the School of the Art Institute cafeteria. I remember I had salad. I remember what the weather was like. I remember bits of conversations I had that day. When I made this drawing, it was late at night. It had been a long day. I had several classes that day. I'd spent the whole evening in the studio. All the other students were gone. I was sitting on a 1-gallon bucket of gesso with my drawing book in my lap, looking in a mirror. You can see my paint table behind me. And this is before I started writing the date and time on every drawing that I made. Now I write it since 1995, so this is 93, I think. But since then, I write the date, the time, and a brief description of what the scene is on every drawing, almost. Sometimes on the back. I got married very young. I married my high school sweetheart. We were like Romeo and Juliet, but kind of young lovers. And we got married and we intentionally decided to have a baby right off the bat. We were only 20 and Joey, our little Joey, was conceived the night my great-grandmother Ethel Doris died. Because I had this idea that I didn't want her spirit to leave the earth. So I would often ride in the car. Lori would drive so that I could draw. And so I'm sitting in the passenger seat. We're on our way to Chicago from Southeast Missouri, where our hometown is. It's an 8-hour drive from there. And I'm just turned around drawing my baby Joey. And this drawing was made around the same time that I made the self-portrait I just showed you. We were living in Chicago. I was going to art school. It was the summer of 1994, and it was a very hot summer in Chicago. And we only had one window unit, air conditioner, in our bedroom. So we pretty much moved into our bedroom, and we moved Joey into our room with us. And you can see my TV was there on the upper left-hand corner of the drawing. And notice the toy truck on the floor behind where Joey's sleeping. I was young, a young dad. I was only 22. Joey was 2, and our lives were full of toys. And maybe the first major group of work that I did was when I was at the Art Institute, my junior year. I started bringing all these toys, a lot of the toys, to my studio at the Art Institute, and I would set up these big, complicated scenes with these toys and make paintings of them with direct observation. I've always painted from direct observation or imagination. I think I've made 2 or 3 paintings from photos in my life, and that was when I was in my early 20s. And I really didn't like how that felt. So I don't like to paint photos. After graduate school, my little family, we moved to New York City, which was absurd. There was no internet at the time. Nobody had cell phones. Everything was hard, it's like harder logistically and everything. But my studio mate, Doug Young, who's still one of my best friends, he lives in Brooklyn and he's a terrific painter. And we still hang out, monthly or so, or every other month or so. Doug and my wife, Lori, and my baby, Joey, we all packed everything we owned into a Penske moving truck and drove to New York City from Chicago. And we moved into a 4th floor walk-up apartment. It was a crummy apartment in a beautiful part of Brooklyn, Park Slope, Brooklyn. But it was a roach-infested, really bad apartment. But it was a long day. Drove through the night to get to New York, and then when we got there in the morning, I remember we got out of the moving truck, and it was a day much like today. It's like a beautiful summer day. But I remember Lori, my 22-year-old wife, getting out of the truck, and she was crying. And I remember she was so upset to be in New York, but she did not want to be there. She felt like a fish out of the water. And we grew up in this very small town in Southeast Missouri, and she was not happy to be there. But we moved all of our stuff up the 4th floor into the apartment. It took all day. And then Lori and Joey went to bed early. And my friend Doug and I, we were so excited to be in New York for the first night. And we took the Penske moving truck back, and it was about 8 o'clock. And we were like, let's go into Manhattan. Let's go find a bookstore that's open, and we didn't have cell phones or internet. So it was, we just got on the subway and went into Manhattan, and we got off at Union Square, and we walked right into this train. Still my favorite bookstore in the world. And the very first book I bought when I was in New York was this William Bailey book. And I was obsessed with William Bailey at the time because he was making paintings of clusters of inanimate objects like I was. Although I was making paintings from direct observation, he was making his from imagination. And that was like magic to me. It was so hard to understand how he would do that. I remember sitting in Washington Square Park that night near the fountain with my friend Doug, watching the kids on their skateboards and just loving being in the city, looking at this William Bailey book. And I was really captivated by this photo in the back of the book of William Bailey with his family. That's Sandra Stone, his wife, who's also a terrific painter, if you guys don't know. She's a wonderful painter, look her up. And these are their children, Alex and Ford Bailey. I remember sitting near the fountain in Washington Square Park that night in 1995, a hot summer night, and wondering, where are Alex and Ford now? I wonder what they're like. Because this photo was made in 1973. In 1973, when this photo was made, I was 1 year old. So if I were in this photo, I would be a 1 year old, by Alex maybe. I went to Yale partially because I wanted to study with William Bailey. He was my favorite painter at the time, and I knew he was teaching there, and I really wanted to study with him. When I got there, I was so disappointed to learn that he had just retired. So I missed him. But in final semester there, he did come back as a visiting artist. So I got to have him in the studio once. And I had that book with me and I asked him to sign it. And he wrote, to John Mitchell, all best wishes and good luck as a painter, William Bailey, April 1999. And I'm so glad that I had the presence of mind to ask him to sign it. And I'm so glad he did. I really treasure having that now. He died last year. He was 89 years old, I believe. Now I'm skipping ahead. So this is 2006. My wife and I split when we were at Yale. She could not think of moving back to New York City, and she was done with the painting life, and she said she wanted to be somewhere where it would never be cold. So she took Joey and moved to San Diego. And I would get Joey in the summer times. The first year that we were broken up was Joey was 8. So his first summer spending with me alone in Brooklyn, he was 8 years old. And every summer we would take a big trip. That year we went to Egypt and Israel and went swimming in the Red Sea. It was a great year. This year, this was just after his 13th birthday. This is June 26, 2006 at 4:30 p.m. For his 13th birthday. One of the things that Joey and I would do in the summertime, he would come to New York and he would want to play all the music that he'd been listening to that year. And I would share with him the music that I had been listening to that year. So music was a very special thing for both of us. It was our common ground and our way to communicate with each other. And for his 13th birthday, he wanted a guitar. So I bought him a guitar and guitar lessons at the New York City Guitar School in Midtown Manhattan. And I wanted to take him to see his first concert. But I wanted his first concert to be a really good one. So I got tickets to see the Rolling Stones in Boston. And we went and we had the best time. It was such a great time. And then a few days later, and that was on his birthday, June 22nd. And 4 days later, on June 26th, I went with him to his first guitar lesson. He was studying with a guy named Suk, and I made this drawing with him playing the guitar. And I was so happy that the drawing came out so well because it felt like a significant moment. Now, Joey went on to study guitar, classical guitar, at University of North Texas in Denton, Texas, where Nora Jones went to school. And he's a terrific guitar player now. He loves Bach and Mozart, and he plays classical music on his guitar. And I love spending time with Joey and listening to him play his guitar, making drawings of him as he's drawing. But sometimes these drawing books that I carry around with me everywhere I go, I'll misplace one. Sometimes I lose them. I've lost some. At the end of every year since 1995, I mail however many books I've completed to my mother. And she has all of my drawing books in a library in Southeast Missouri. It's fun when I go home to see that shelf with books, like, wow, look at all these books. But I had misplaced this one for a while, for years. And then I found it and I started drawing in it again. And then I went to visit my friend, Brad, who lives on the Upper East Side of Manhattan. I was hanging out at Brad's house, making drawings with him and having dinner with him or something. And I accidentally left the book at Brad's house. Now, here's the thing. Brad is friends with Keith Richards, the lead singer or the lead guitar player of the Rolling Stones. Keith Richards has an apartment on the Upper East Side. So I text Brad when I got home and said, hey, man, I think I left my book at your apartment. And he texted back, yes, you did. I said, I'll come back and get it sometime this week. A few days later, I got a text from Brad, hey, man, I have to tell you, Keith Richards has your drawing book. I'm afraid you may never see it again. So in 2014, Keith Richards wrote a children's book called Gus and Me, and his daughter illustrated the book. And I guess he was just into looking at drawings. But Keith had been visiting my friend Brad, and Brad showed him the book, and Keith was like, wow, this is terrific. Can I keep this for a while? I'll give it back to you. So I didn't think I'd ever get the book back. And then I got another text from Brad a week later saying, hey, I got your book back. So I went and picked it up. And when I was looking through it, I came to this page and I was so excited. Oh my God, Keith Richards wrote on the drawing of Joey's first guitar lesson, To Joey, One Love, Keith Richards, 14. What are the chances that I'll take Joey to see the Rolling Stones for his 13th birthday, and then somehow Keith Richards would wind up with his drawing book 8 years later, and then he would sign this drawing to Joey? Imagine. That is magic. That to me is the same kind of magic that that man who made that painting on the cave wall was tapping into. That's what I mean when I say I believe in magic. I'm going to show a couple of drawings that I made in 2014. I was a visiting artist in Chicago, staying with a woman named Renee Lee, who was a peer student when I was at the Art Institute. She's a wonderful painter. And I was staying at her apartment in Pilsen, Chicago. And she has this great collection of all these African statues. And while I was staying with her over the course of 2 weeks, teaching art classes in the daytime in Chicago, I would set up a couple of her African statues like goalposts, and then sit on her couch and look at the mirror across the room and do these self-portraits. When I was at Yale, the most common question always was, who's your audience? Who are you making this work for? Who's your viewer? And so that's something that I frequently think about. And these two drawings are unusual because the ideal viewer for these two drawings is me. Because when I look at them, I'm looking between these two goalposts, these African statues. And just by the way it was made, it puts me right back in the position I was in when I made the drawing. And I'm looking at my own reflection. But every day, that reflection grows further away from me. And these drawings have some kind of buzzing verisimilitude that keeps pulling me back to look at them again and again. And they've stayed very present in my mind. And I keep thinking that I should make paintings having to do with these drawings. That's a detail. This is a drawing that I made last October, COVID year, October 22nd, 2020. A lot of these drawings, you'll notice, I make them in what I consider to be the magic time, which is between 3 a.m. and 5 a.m. I'm an insomniac. I stay up really late. Usually I sleep 4 or 5 hours a night. And then once every other week, maybe I'll crash and sleep for 12 hours. But this night I made this drawing between 3 and 5 a.m., October 22nd, in my living room. At the end of the studio day, I often put on a DVD. I have a big collection of DVDs, and I love horror movies. So I was watching John Carpenter's Halloween. October is always scary movie month for me, where I watch a scary movie every day at the end of the studio day. But when I'm drawing, it has to be a movie that I've seen before, otherwise I'm too distracted. So I was watching John Carpenter's Halloween and drawing. The title of my talk today is Sure as Divine. And here's where it comes from. This is a very special family heirloom. This book belonged to my great-grandmother and grandfather, Ethel and Bill Doris. They started dating in 1916. Ethel was 13, Bill was a few years older, and they had this courting book. She would write a poem to him and give it to him. He would write a poem back to her in response and give it back to her. She would write a poem in response to his poem and give it back to him. And it went back and forth like that until it was filled, and then they got married. And my favorite poem in the book is one of hers, and it says, "Sure as a vine grows round a rafter, you are the boy I am after." And my great-grandmother Doris was the beacon of love, wisdom, and kindness in my life. She was a very important person to me. And she died when I was just a teenager, so I hadn't started this daily habit of drawing everyone I see and painting everyone yet. And so I feel I lost her. And I think that has a lot to do with why I draw and paint the people around me. I don't want to lose them all. This is a drawing of my mom. I made this Saturday, November 28, 2015, at 4:37 a.m. She was asleep in her bed. We had stayed up. She was trying to not fall asleep. She was trying to keep up with me, but she drifted off. And I made this drawing of her and her little dog, Julia, who she named after her favorite actress, Julia Roberts. And the bedside table lamp is shining light. The light is coming from the west. because the wall that's behind the bed is the south-facing wall. And when I was making this drawing, I was thinking about that. The sweet melancholy of the sun setting light, even though it was lamplight. And I was thinking of my mother as a sleeping angel, like an angel at rest with her little dog. I think you can see how much I love her. And my dad, my mom's name is Lori, my dad's name is Tom Mitchell, and my dad was the chief of police in my hometown throughout my childhood, into my teenage years, and long after I left home and until his retirement. I made this painting of my dad on his back porch, and this is the house I grew up in. My parents still live there in Southeast Missouri in this house. And I asked my dad to sit on his lawn chair there under this freaky neon green yard umbrella. I don't know, God knows why it's such a hideous thing, but I love the light that it casts. You know, it casts such a great, weird light. So I didn't want the green yard umbrella in the painting, but I wanted that weird light. And I asked my dad to wear a green shirt because I wanted to make an earthy painting of him, green. And I wanted it to be square because a square makes me think of 4, and 4 is an earthly number. The 4 directions, the 4 elements, the 4 seasons, etc. So I made this painting of my dad using long brushes. You can see these bamboo sticks on the trash can. I stick a brush in the end, and I paint from 5 or 6 feet away when I'm painting. And when I'm using a long brush, I put my palette on the ground, as you can see here. And I mix the paint with the brush from a distance. And the reason why I do that is I don't want clean color. I don't want clean mixes. I want to mix it with the brush. I want it to be a little bit more difficult. I want to make painterly paintings. And that's the way to get there. So, but this painting is on a piece of smooth portrait linen stretched over a cradled panel. So this painting has a hard back. And while I was working on it, a gust of wind caught it and blew it off the easel. And it landed face down on the pallet. And my dad and I were just like, a few silent moments passed between us. And my dad said, that can't be good. So I picked it up, and this is what it looked like. And I considered leaving it like that. But then I thought, no, that's not what I meant to do. So I took the extra paint off, and this is what it looks like now. I was also thinking about, I love Arthurian legends, reading about Arthurian legends. And one of my favorite characters in Arthurian legend is the Green Knight, because the Green Knight is the challenger. He's the one that keeps the knights of the round table on the straight and narrow. And that is my dad. My dad was my Green Knight. While I'm on the subject of parents, a few years ago, Anki and I took a road trip up to Maine to visit our friend Gideon Bach and his wife Megan Brady, who are both really great painters. Gideon is one of my favorite living painters. He's such a wonderful painter. He's been here before and spoke here too. But we went up and Gideon had some lobsters in a room in the pot, boiled the lobsters for us, and we had a wonderful dinner. And we were at his mother, Mary Bach's house in the backyard, and I made this drawing of her in the magic hour. You know, the sun was setting, it was summertime, and I made this drawing of her in about 15 minutes, and I really loved it, drawing of Gideon's mom. And while we were in Maine on that trip, Anki and I went to the beach not too far from Gideon's house one day, and I made this drawing of Anki picking up seashells. And this is an unusual drawing of Anki because she's small in the composition, but I really wanted to show that glorious Maine nature, and Anki's small. Drawn to my partner, Anki, we're engaged to be married. We were going to be married last year, but we were going to go to Indonesia to get married, but we weren't able to do it, obviously, because of COVID. But we've been together for 16 years now. And I draw Anki sleeping all the time. She goes to sleep early, and I stay up late. Then she wakes up early, and she usually wakes up when I'm going to bed. But she often falls asleep on the couch in the living room, and I always make these drawings of her. And I wanted to show you this one because look at how her hand is moving. This happens a lot. If I'm making a drawing of somebody and they shift or move, I'll just redraw a hand. So it kind of, I think, talks back to that cave painting. The idea of movement, the way that line is redrawn again and again, and it becomes animated. But there's something so sweet and kind of melancholy about drawing your lover sleeping. And I literally have over 1,000 drawings on me sleeping. When I drew this one, I was playing True Romance, the Tony Scott movie on DVD. Great movie. While I was drawing this. Here she's wearing a sweater. She's from Norway. Her mom and most of her family live in Norway. Her dad lives in the Canary Islands. She sewed this heart onto this sweater, and I love it when she wears that. One of her friends who lives in Bergen, Norway, has that drawing now. And this is my friend Kim Moon, one of my great friends. And so this is a painting I made of my friend Kim. We work on Saturday nights. So the way my regular week goes is I have 8 painting sessions a week. 1 every day. So I have a different sitter every day. So I have my Monday sitter, my Tuesday sitter. But on Saturdays, I do 2 sessions. And I like to have the sessions spaced a week apart because in between the sessions, I spend a lot of time drawing from the paintings and making paintings of the paintings, kind of thinking about the paintings. But Kim and I made this on Saturday nights in her apartment in Bed-Stuy, Brooklyn. And it was very important to her that I include her beard in painting. So, it's one of the difficulties of making a painting of someone in their own space is I have to get there every night, right? So I have to pack all my stuff. I have my list of everything I need. If I, please don't forget anything because it's going to be a disaster, which happens occasionally. And then pack my car, go to Bed-Stuy, find a parking space, which is never easy, unload all my stuff, set up. Then we can start painting, usually around 8 p.m. And we would usually work until 2 or 3 a.m. She's a night owl like I am. And then often, and when I get there, I have to go to the bodega and buy her a 6-pack of Miller Lite. And then we would get started, and I got a beer can in there. She was so happy with that. And then often, at the end of the painting session, we both we pack my car together, we get in my car and we drive into the Lower East Side and go to the Selka, which is an all-night Ukrainian diner. We have dinner or breakfast, usually like 3, 4 in the morning. And Ruth Miller who's a very good friend of mine, also a legendary painter. She's 90 now. She's one of my very good friends. Ruth told me that Philip Guston used to love to go to the Selka too. So that's another reason why I love to go to the Selka, this all-night Ukrainian diner. And often at 3, 4 in the morning on a Saturday night, we're driving through the Hasidic part of Brooklyn, Orthodox Jewish part of Brooklyn. And it's amazing to see all of those people out, and active. While I was working on that painting of Ken, we talk about painting a lot. And I would often, she didn't know much about painting when we started hanging around together. She has a business degree from the University of Ohio. She's from Cincinnati. And she's a brilliant business mind. But I would buy her art books and give her books. And one of the books I gave her was this Antonio Lopez Garcia book. And she loved this painting. And she said, we should do a painting like this, me in the bathtub. And I said, great idea. After we finish this one, we'll do that. So we started planning and painting Ken in the bathtub before we even finished the first one. And so I made this drawing of her in the bathroom, and I agreed to do it. I'm like, yeah, I was gung ho, great idea, let's do it. Before I had even seen her bathroom upstairs. She has a bathroom downstairs and one upstairs. We went up and looked at the bathroom, and I was like, oh my God, Ken, it's so small. How are we going to do this? It's really tiny. But this is the first drawing I made of her in the bathtub. Notice that it's square. I wanted to make it on a square format. I made this drawing on June 4th, 2016 at 2 a.m. And notice her arm is down in the water, and really all the focus is on her head. And that was my idea. And that's not how the painting turns out, which you'll see. But I still think it's a wonderful idea and something that I may want to revisit later. This is the way the painting looked after the first session. So it's 56 inches wide, and it's about 40 inches high or so, 36 inches high maybe. But notice her arm is down, her closed arm is down in the water. Notice that there's a bar of soap on the rim of the tub that's closer to us. And notice the sink on the lower right-hand side, how it's a smooth arc. I would go to Kim's on Saturday nights. Her bathroom is tiny. I have to sit on the toilet when I'm painting. You can see my long brushes. She took this photo from her position in the bathroom. So you can see when I'm showing you this because you can see when I reach out in her direction how close my hand gets to her. That's how small her bathroom is. And notice the glass sink. Notice that it has a wavy rim. The first glass sink that we started the painting with had a straight rim. It was like a regular circle. But that glass full sink got broken. And so her landlord had to replace the sink, and he was just going to put in a porcelain sink. And Kim said, no, you have to get a glass sink. So the only one he could find had this wavy rim, so the painting changed. So here you can see I'm sitting on the toilet, and I'm working with long brushes. I have to put the painting out in the hallway, because if it's in the bathroom, it's too close to me. And I was getting this fisheye lens kind of distortion in the painting, which is a problem. But now notice the soap moved back to the back wall. Notice her arm has come out of the tub. And notice the honey color of the soap. It was very important to her that I got the soap in, because one of her best friends brought her that handmade soap from Arizona. She really wanted it in the painting. So now you can see the problem with painting it in the hallway is I can only see a fragment of the painting at a time. I have to move it over if I want to see the glass sink, and then I can't see her head. So there are all kinds of technical problems making this painting, which made making the painting go on forever. And you're the first people in public to see this painting now. I mean, I haven't shown this painting to anyone yet. Only Kim and I, and maybe some people who've been to my studio have seen it. But notice that the honey-colored soap has turned blueberry because I want her to stand out by contrast. Notice the wavy sink. Notice that I left the distortion, this fisheye lens effect in the front rim of the tub, but I worked it out everywhere else. The whole thing was kind of doing that fisheye lens thing. And we started this painting in 2016 when Barack Obama was our president. We worked on it through Donald Trump's presidency into Joe Biden's presidency. And so much happened during the making of this painting. We listened to Michelle Obama's book on Audible. Kim was actually friends with Eric Garner, who was killed in 2014 on Staten Island. He helped her move into her apartment on Staten Island, the one who said, I can't breathe. We lived this painting through the Black Lives Matter movement, through the Me Too movement. And believe me, we had a lot to talk about. And I love Saturday nights with Kim. And I don't know what we're going to do next, but it's going to be exciting. So we're going to have to start a new painting in the fall. And we finished the painting on June 19th, Saturday last month. So just very recently. This is a painting that's about 58 inches high by 70 inches wide. And my friends Pepper and Riff. Pepper is a fashion historian at the Fashion Institute of Technology in Midtown Manhattan. Riff is an actor and a musician. And I wanted to make a painting of them because their names are so great. Pepper and Riff. I thought it'd be great to have a painting called Pepper and Riff. And I'm showing you the painting in early stage because you can see a lot here. So you notice that there's a lot of drippy stuff happening. Notice that I'm working the painting out, like the way I'm drawing with the paint. And this drippy stuff is because I do something that I call the GAMSOL cascade. So GAMSOL is a solvent like turpentine or turpenoid, but it mats paint, oil paint, in a much better way than turpentine or turpenoid. So I like it better. And instead of taking a rag and dipping it in turpentine and wiping an area out that I don't like, I will, if something's not going well, I'll load a clean brush full of GAMSOL and brush it over the wet painted area that I don't like. And there are two reasons why I do that. The first reason is just because it's fun. It's fun for me and the sitter to watch the GAMSOL just melt the paint down. It's so fun to watch. But then more importantly, it gives me all kinds of incidental information that I might be able to use later. And it doesn't completely obliterate what I'm looking at. It makes it more of a ghost so I can use it. When I'm painting people, I don't ask them to sit perfectly still. In fact, I prefer that they shift and move a little bit and that they be lively. And I'm not standing in one position. I'm shifting and moving because I'm looking for opportunities when I'm painting. I'm not Giacometti, and I'm not trying to get a perfect head in space. I'm building the painting. And shifting and moving helps that. And they talk to me, we talk. I want it to be casual when I'm painting. And I want it to be fun. And if they talk about a book that they've read that I want to read or look into, or a movie or music or something, or they say something interesting, I'll often write it on the painting just in the heat of a moment. And then at the end of the session, I might transfer those notes off of the painting into my notebook. When I was working on this painting, Pepper said, "I love words with images." And I wrote that on the painting. You can see it kind of above her head. And between sessions, she wrote a beautiful essay about what it was like to sit for this painting. And one night when she came to sit, she brought it with her, and I didn't even know she had written this thing. And she was sitting for me, and she said, "John, I have a surprise for you." And she read it out loud. And it was so moving to hear this beautifully written account of what it feels like to sit. This is what the painting looks like now. Pepper wanted me to include this purple glass of wine because Prince died during the making of this painting. So the purple wine is for Prince. And I wanted to, not all paintings are of one person. It's good to do a painting of two people. This is Jennifer Samet. She's also been here and spoken before. She's an art writer, art historian, gallerist, who I have a tremendous amount of respect for. I respect her work a lot. And she's a good friend of mine. And she wanted to come and sit for me. So I said, okay, we'll bring 3 or 4 different black outfits. And because I had this idea of making a painting of Jen Samet with her long brown hair, wearing all black clothes, sitting on a wooden chair on my black model platform. The model platform is about this high because I want my sitters to be looking eye to eye with me. I don't want to be looking down at the tops of everyone's heads. And I don't want, all eternity to be looking down at the bottom of their head, the top of their head. So I prefer them to be eye to eye. And then I wanted a white wall in the background, right? So austere. I was thinking of austerity. So we started this painting, and I wanted to show you this image because you can see how the painting starts, very rough. And I'm working with the paint. I'm drawing, I'm looking for her legs. It reminds me of that cave painting of the lion that we looked at first. But I'm looking for the painting. Notice that there's no glove on the floor here. We didn't start with this idea about a glove. But she was connected to this art gallery called Stephen Harvey Gallery for a while when we started the painting. And I had been visiting that gallery one winter day, and it was very snowy outside. And when I left the gallery, there was this beautiful pair of women's gloves. Someone must have dropped them in the snow. And I picked them up, and I thought, oh, wow, these are such nice gloves. I'm going to give these to Anki when I get home. And on the subway on the ride back to Williamsburg, I was playing with the zipper, and I thought, no, I'm gonna use this in the painting. And I started thinking about the tradition of paintings of people with one glove on and one glove off. I could give a whole lecture just on that history. It's so interesting. Look at Rembrandt's Night Watch painting. Think about that, for example. But I brought the gloves home, and I threw the right one down on the floor, and I thought, wow, what a great echo of her bare right hand to have this right glove. It's like a hiccup painting or something. Now, painting a person is a performance, right? There's a performance aspect to it. They're giving you their time. You don't want them to feel like you're wasting their time. And now, at this stage in this painting, I'm in a terrible mess because the head looks terrible. The face, that just looks awful. And I'm feeling as I'm working on the painting, man, if she gets up and comes around and sees this, she's going to feel devastated. And she's going to say something to me like, you don't know what you're doing. I don't have time for this. I'm out of here. And I have so much anxiety, as I'm working. It's really like a lot of anxiety. And my anxiety becomes self-perpetuated, and it spins you down. And it's really hard when it starts to go badly. And I'm thinking, okay, I'm locked out of this space. I have to find a new way in. This is terrible. What am I going to do? Oh, and also notice that the model platform goes all the way across from left to right behind her. So at one point between sessions, this is why I like a week between sessions, because I can get over that anxiety. I can make drawings and paintings of the painting and I can kind of work on it. I was making a drawing of the painting between sessions and I cut the platform like that so that I could see the concrete floor 3 feet down on the left. And that opened up the whole thing and the painting became exciting to me in a new way. Now I've got this glove. You can see how it's accumulating. You start with a very basic idea, and as you go, the painting becomes what it's going to become, and you could never have predicted it in the beginning. And I drew this red grid in paint over her face. I had never done that before, but it was the idea that I had to break up the face. It was a way to kind of obscure the face, but also to make it so that I could see how things were lining up so that I could get back into the head when she came back. And this is how the painting looks now. A lot of emphasis on triangles. The triangle between the forefinger and the thumb on both the glove and her hand. The triangle between her leg, the chair, and the platform. The one between the rungs of the chair. The triangle of the whole painting. The one between her boots. All of these triangles became very important. It's like when you're making a painting like this, one of these kind of big paintings that take a lot of time, I always compare it to getting in a rowboat and going to Europe. You know, you just start rowing and then you wind up hitting land in Africa. Like, you know, it's just how it is. Albert Dürer is one of my great masters, somebody that I look at and think about a lot. And Albert Dürer was born in 1471. I was born in 1971, so 500 years apart. So that just means that when I look at Albert Dürer's work, I always know automatically how old he was when he made the thing that he made. So we're in 2021, 500 years ago, it was 1521. And here's an amazing thing. 1520, the plague came to Nuremberg, Albert Dürer's hometown. And people were dying left and right. And Albert Dürer had to get out of there. So he took the biggest trip of his life in 1520. He went on a 1-year journey to the Netherlands, and he took his wife and his housekeeper with him, partially to escape the plague. Like we had a plague last year, right? 2020. What an amazing underlying patterns, right? Like radiate out. So my favorite work that he made during the year that he was traveling is this drawing of a Moorish slave who was owned by a very wealthy Netherlandish family. And it's a silver point drawing. He took boxes of his engravings and woodcuts, and he would sell them along the way. That's how he financed his trip. And he would make these portraits of people along the way in silver point drawing and small paintings. And this is my favorite one. Look at the way she's looking at him in a deferential way. She's looking down, right? He's looking right at her. And you can see he's drawing her from life. You can see her movement. It's animated, almost like that first cave painting we looked at. If you look at the corners of her mouth, for example, they almost feel like they're drawn from slightly different angles, probably because she's moving a little bit, right? It feels so alive, this drawing. And I love it because he saw this invisible person and he made her visible. And I can tell you that when I'm drawing and painting people, I always fall in love with them. You always fall in love with who you're drawing and painting. And I can see in this drawing that he had an empathy and an affection for her. It's clear. And now we know about her. We know her image because he made her visible. And how special is that? 500 years later. It's an absolutely beautiful drawing. Toward the end of the time that I was painting Jennifer Samet, she got a job in a new art gallery in NoVo. And one day she said, John, you got to come to the gallery. We have this new exhibition of Marcia Marcus. She's a figurative painter from the 50s, 60s, and 70s. You're going to love it. And I said, I've never heard of Marcia Marcus. That's pretty crazy. So I went to the gallery and I was knocked out. Great exhibition by this lady painter who was making these dynamite paintings and not really getting enough attention for it in her lifetime. I mean, in her heyday. And she made this painting. It's called Family 2. It's about 74 inches high by 90 inches wide, so it's quite big. And she made it in 1970, 1 year before I was born. And 1 year before Linda Nocklin's pivotal essay, Why Have There Been No Great Women Artists? If you've never read that essay, I encourage you to look it up. It's an important essay in the history of feminism and in the history of painting. But here's Marsha making these dynamite paintings before Linda Nocklin's essay, Why Have There Been No Great Women Artists? I love this painting. So I saw the exhibition before the opening, and then Jen said, you should come to the opening because her daughters are going to be here, the two girls in the painting. So I went to the opening, and I met Kate and Jane, the two little girls in the painting. And I said, where's Marsha? And they said, well, she's 89 years old, and her mobility is not great. So she's in a nursing home on the Lower East Side. And I thought that was so sad. You know, she had this great exhibition up, but Kate said, you know, there's no way she could get up these stairs. It's a stairs-only, you know, gallery, and you have to walk up 4 big flights of stairs. She couldn't have made it up there. And I said, that's just too sad. And I said, I would love to meet Marsha. Could I meet Marsha? And Kate said, sure, I'll take you to the nursing home on Sunday. I'm sure she'd like to meet you. So I went to the gallery, and I got to meet Marsha Marcus. Legendary figure. She's amazing. She's so lively. Her mobility is not great, but she's so witty and so funny. And she is laying there unseen, like forgotten by the art world. And I love going and spending Sundays with Marsha. She tells me stories about Willem de Kooning, who was her buddy. She tells me stories about hanging out with Marcel Duchamp. She knew these people. She studied with Edwin Dickinson. She has a great story. She was great friends with, one day on her birthday, I bring her blueberries and apple juice and make drawings of her. 10 minutes of silence, and I was just drawing her, and she was just laying there looking at the ceiling, and she said, out of the blue, I miss Sally. And I said, who's Sally, Marsha? And she said, Sally Avery. She was Milton's wife. I miss them both. They were my great friends, and they're gone, and everybody's gone. And then one day I brought a catalog of her exhibition, and we were looking at the pictures, and I said, Marsha, I love this painting of Family 2. And I love the blue robe that your husband is wearing in the painting. And she said, oh, I got that a long time ago. I think she said she got it in Morocco. And she said, you know, Kate has that robe. You should ask her if you could use it. You could paint it. And I said, great idea. So I talked to Kate. I said, Kate, Marsha told me that I could use the blue robe and make a painting of it. And Kate said, okay. So Kate comes to my studio one day with the blue robe from the Family 2 painting and says, take care of it. Don't get any paint on it. It's a loaner. We want it back. It's an important family heirloom, you know. So now I've got this robe and this idea of making a riff on the Family 2 painting by Marsha Marcus. I need a man who can pose in the robe. I was just winding down this painting of my friend Garrett Swan. Garrett Swan is a professional model. He has modeling agencies in New York, Milan, Miami, LA, and he's always jetting around the world, posing for various advertisements, whatever. But we didn't really know each other at all. I met him at a party, and he just said to me, I heard that you're really good at painting people. And I was like, I don't know who told you that, but okay. And he said, oh, I would love to paint it. And I said, all right, well, come to the studio and we'll start painting. And so he came and we started. So I didn't know him at all. And I love that we get to know each other through the process of making a painting. It's such a special thing. So imagine you're working on, he's my Wednesday night model. So we work, he shows up at 6 o'clock, we work until 11 o'clock or so, and then he goes home. I'm cleaning up my paint and everything. And then I leave, I'm by myself. I get on the subway. I'm going into the Lower East Side to go to Celta to have my late night dinner at like 2 o'clock in the morning, whatever. I'm standing on a subway platform, and this happens. I'm waiting for the train. Can you press play? I'm standing there waiting for the train. I've just spent 5 or so hours looking at Garrett, and this happens. You gotta be kidding me. Like, it's so crazy. So that really happened. All right, so I asked Garrett if he would model as the male figure in the blue robe for my riff on Marsha Marcus's painting. Now I have the male figure. I'm not going to be able to get the 2 little girls because I'm, 45-year-old man. How am I going to get 2 10-year-old girls to come and sit for me? So I'm like, okay, I might have to scrap that idea, but I can get the female figure. Who's it going to be? So I go with Jen Salmon to this big group show of figure paintings at the West Gallery in the West Village. She's moderating a panel talk. And at the end of the panel talk, I'm walking around the gallery, lots of rooms, small rooms of paintings, looking at these figure paintings by lots of different people. I'm in this room, crowded room, looking at these great little paintings of female figures. And I'm thinking like, wow, these are really terrific. And I just asked out loud, does anybody know who did these? And this girl steps out of the crowd and says, yes, I did. And I said, hey, I'm John Mitchell. It's nice to meet you. And she says, I'm Alex. And I said, Alex Bailey? William Bailey's daughter? Yes, I'm Alex Bailey, William Bailey's daughter. Oh my God, I've been thinking about this girl since 1995 when I was sitting in Washington Square Park looking at that black and white photo. I've been wondering where you've been. So we've become great friends now. And I sit for her on Sundays, and she made this little 10 by 10 inch square painting of me. And it's so funny because she made the painting, and I'm sitting there, I haven't seen the painting yet. And she says, John, it's finished, and I've painted you as a grumpy banker. I get up and go around and say, that is the grumpy banker. So we affectionately call it the grumpy banker, and I have it now, and I love it so much. Okay, so now we're looking at family 2 again. Now notice, the 2 little girls on the left, their heads meet the 50% horizon line. And they're to the left, right? Notice within the art space, the only person completely in the art space is Marcia. She's in the background, she's the painter. The biggest figure in the painting is the father. And he is half in and half out of the art space. Now, you look at this painting, and think about that photo that we looked at, that I was looking at by Washington Square Park in 1995. 2 children on the left. Sonia Stone, great painter, wife of William Bailey, mother of these children, is the only figure in this art space. The largest figure in the image is this male figure who's half in and half out of the art space. Again, magic. And like the magic in that cave, I believe in magic. And it has to be Alex in my family 2 painting, riff on the family 2 painting. So we start the painting. I asked Alex to wear a dress kind of like the one Marcia's wearing. Now you can see my damn salt cascade going on at the beginning of this big painting, and it's roughly the same size as the family 2 painting. I'm trying to figure it all out. Garrett's wearing the blue robe. You can see here I drew this cross on the painting with fine charcoal so I could find the center. And once I found the center, I decided to put the corner of the platform right on the center, so that changed. So the center of the painting is the corner of the platform. At this stage of the painting, I'm considering putting in my paint can in the foreground, and those orange stripy shapes are my brushes. So I'm thinking I could bring myself into the painting this way, so you would have the feeling that maybe there's a second painter or a third person in the room. And I had this idea, I'm looking at Garrett, he's looking at Alex, she's looking back at me, so this triangulating relationship. But then I quickly decided, no, I took that out and left it so that it can feel eventually like you can step into the painting, like Diego Velázquez's Los Meninas, one of my favorite paintings in Madrid. This is my friend Pops, he's my Friday night sitter, and he's using, here, he's just modeling for, like, he was just playing with my longest brush. And that's the one I start painting with. You know, there's this saying, if you put the fulcrum in the right place, I can move a mountain. It's kind of like that. Like using a long brush like that makes the painting smaller, so I can find the composition much easier. This is a small painting that I made of the painting in between sessions. And this is what the painting looks like now. On the studio TV in the background, there's an image of Rackstraw Downs, who's great landscape painter. If you don't know who he is, please look him up. He's so fantastic. But Alex has been sitting for Rackstraw Downs on Wednesdays, and then coming and sitting for me on Wednesday nights. So I thought I would love to have Rackstraw Downs in the image. So I've got Rackstraw Downs on the TV painting. And then one day, Alex and I went to see this wonderful Alice Neal show at David's Warner Gallery. And that night we were talking about it, and Garrett didn't know who Alice Neal was. So I pulled a book off my shelf and gave it to him so he could see it. He laid the book by his leg. So I let Alice Neal is in here. And Rastrop Hounds is in here. This painting is still in progress. And I've been doing these one session sitter portraits. A person comes, they sit for me for 3 hours. I try to do it in one session. It is what it is. I try to keep them fresh and alive. This is a painting of my friend Sally, who is actually from Cairo, Egypt. I met her because she came to my studio with one of her university class that she was in. Her professor brought her class to my studio as a studio visit. And she sent me an email later saying, hey, could I come and sit for a portrait? So for me, these paintings talk to that Egyptian portrait that I showed. This is my friend Twinkle, and I wanted to paint her because her name is Twinkle. But I really got to like Twinkle a lot. And Twinkle is from Panipat, India, and she went back to Panipat during COVID. So this is a painting that's in India now. And this is my friend Ann Courtney, and I'm going to make a bad, corny dad joke here. You know what kind of music cavemen like? Rock music. And Ann Courtney is the founder and lead singer of one of my favorite New York City rock bands. They're called Mother Feather. If you've never heard of them, look them up. They're so great. And you'll hear Ann Courtney singing. She's a great singer. She writes the songs. And this is my latest model, Javen Marino, who lives a block from me. I passed Javen on the street about a month ago. He was walking this way, and I was walking this way. I was going to the art supply store. And as he was walking toward me, he was wearing this pink button-up shirt. And I was thinking as he was coming down the street, like, wow, look at this guy. He looks great. You know, that great hat. And I was thinking of his hat made me think of a Terry Winters painting. Terry Winters is a great painter. Made me think of this Terry Winters painting. And then he passed me, and it was like the air of the guy. It was like something special about this guy. I could just feel it, you know. And I kept walking. And then I've never done this before, but I stopped and I looked back, and he was about 50 feet down the sidewalk, and he turned the corner. And I thought to myself, I can't let that guy get away. So I went sprinting after him, yelling after him, hey, you, hey. And he's just walking. And then I get closer, and I'm like, hey, you with the hat. And he stops and turns around and looks at me and he's like, what? And I'm like, dude, I'm a painter. I saw you walk by. I saw you in paint. I really want to paint your portrait. And he was like, okay, I get it. I'm a photographer. I've been doing photos at NYU. I get it. He was like, just snap a photo of me and paint from a photo. No, man, I don't paint from photos. You got to come to my studio. But my studio's only a block from here. Will you come on Monday? This is like Tuesday. And he says, all right. So I said, give me your phone number. He gives me his phone number. I put it in my phone. I said, I'll text you some images. If you like my work, then see what you think. So I texted him some images, and he texted me back. These are very, very well executed. I'm interested. So he shows up at Monday at 6 p.m., ready to sit. I thought he was just going to come over and look at the studio, and then we were going to plan to sit. But he's like, come on, let's just do it. So we made this painting. And that's the Terry Winters painting that I thought of when I saw his hat. And I'm really trying to channel Terry Winters in that hat. And now we're about to start a bigger, more ambitious painting. And Javen Marino, he is, I was right. He's a very special dude. He's so soulful, so cool. I love hanging out with him. I'm so excited to start a big painting of Jaden. So that's my talk.
So can you talk a little bit more about like the process, like specifically like what the time scale is for each painting?
For paintings of people, the way people come into my world, they come in all different ways. I might chase somebody down the street and beg them to sit for me. Or they might send me an email and say, hey, I love your work, and can we do a painting together? I won't just paint anybody though. I have to have the right feeling, like we have to have the right energy, especially for a big painting, because they take a lot of time. But I do think it's important for me to do these one session portraits too, just to keep my hand and eye, and to be going quick. But on the ones I prefer to work on are the big ones, you know, and they take a lot more time. They can take anywhere from 6 months to 6 years. I spent 15 years on a drawing. So I'm a very kind of obsessive person. Like I just want to keep spending time with this person. And I always think I would love to find, if there was a way to identify the most boring person in the universe, that's the person I would love to work with, because I know they would not be bored if I brought them to the studio and started talking to them. And I'm always thinking about, I want my world of people to be reflective of my city, which is New York City. I want it to feel like a ride on the L train. And breaking demographics is really hard, but it makes me have a really diverse group of friends, which makes me happy. But like I would love to make a painting of like 2 8-year-old Puerto Rican girls, for example. Like that's just going to be really difficult. I would love to make a painting of a whole Hasidic family. Like if I could get a whole Hasidic family to come and sit for me, like that would be amazing. But it's going to be really difficult, So I'm always on the prowl for my next victim. And yeah, I don't know what else to say about it.
Do you feel that you often court your new subject matter with a series of like one session paintings? Do you have to find something in a smaller painting or you take on like a longer, more involved portrait with that?
No, sometimes like the painting Jen Salmon, it just starts with a general idea. Like just in my imagination, I'm just thinking like girl sitting on a chair, all black clothes, a wooden chair, simple wooden chair, white wall. Start with that. And I start with a general idea. And sometimes I'm thinking about other art, like the Family 2 painting. Like I'm specifically entering into this project through Marsha Marcus's Family 2 painting. Sometimes that happens. But I love to start with a general, simple idea, and then just get started. Have the person come over, and then I know that what's going to happen is it's going to change and things are going to happen. And it's exciting. You don't know what you're going to get. You just start working on it, and it unfolds over time. And another fun thing about painting models and having a different sitter every night is everybody who comes, they don't know each other, but they get to know each other through the other paintings in the room, and they watch each other's paintings develop, and they get to be really curious about each other. And I tell them, I'm the mediator. I tell them stories about, oh, Jen, like that's what's happening with Jen this week, or, it's so fun. And then the opening for an exhibition like this is so fun because it's like a party where everybody comes together and meets for the first time. That's why we called my last exhibition Birthday Party. It's like the birthday of this work.
I'm curious, you talked about how you got a lot of questions, maybe in grad school, about audience, like who's your audience, or I'm curious about that, how you think about it as both a personal archive, but you also seem like someone who's kind of aware of other people are going to see your work. So has that evolved for you, the way you think about audience or posterity?
Well, I think about the sitter. When I'm painting the sitter, I often think first and foremost about what the sitter might be thinking. I do think about audience. I want to be a famous painter and have paintings at the Metropolitan Museum of Art and the MoMA and everything. Like, part of me, would love to have that. But another part of me is like, that's just ridiculous to even think about. And I'm more interested in the Fayum and the cave people who were making those amazing. I'm more interested in magic. And magic happens. Like if you follow your heart, doors will open where you didn't even know they existed. A vital life vitalizes other lives, and the world moves in to help you. But here, I want to read this poem. Kay Ryan is my favorite poet, and she was the poet laureate in the United States for a while. She's an amazing poet. She lives in Marin County, California, and she wrote this poem called Ideal Audience. Not a scattered legion, not a dozen from a single region for whom accent matters, not a 7-member coven, not 5 shirted cousins, just one free citizen, maybe not alive, now even, who will know with exquisite gloom that only we two ever found this room. I love that. I make my paintings for the sitter. Like I want the sitter to like their painting. So one person is enough. And myself.
A lot of life is about discovering that stereotypes are not actually true. Now, the stereotype of your life, as I heard it, is you are a successful artist who loves his work and lives seemingly happily in the world.
Wow, that's a big, metaphysical, wonderful question that I don't know if I can answer. I don't know. I had the Green Knight, and I had a mother who loved me, and I have a burning love for painting. And I'm a runner. I'm a marathon runner. I can eat the same food every day, so I don't get tired of going back to the same thing every day. I don't know, maybe those are some qualities that got me there, but stereotypes, are so ridiculous. Like to generalize anyone is so ridiculous. And it's helpful, I guess, in some way to have it, but I'm not about stereotypes at all. I'm so specific. I'm so interested in the specificity of everything, and that's what painting is about. And the way that I paint, I'm looking at everything. Like how is that shadow just slightly cooler than that hand? I'm so into the minutia. I never think about stereotypes. And I don't know. Okay. Here's a good one. So. One of my very favorite, my first guru of painting was Wayne McDowell. Wayne McDowell was 12 years older than me. He was incredible. He didn't go to art school. He did 2 years at art school in Memphis, but he dropped out because he couldn't afford it. He lived in a cornfield in Missouri, and I met him when I was 17, and he was just like, wow, that's what I want to be. He had this big studio, and he painted every day, and he made these beautiful paintings that I didn't know about Giacometti then. But he was very close to Giacometti. His dog's name was Jocko, actually. But he told me, you got to get out of Missouri, go to a big city, and be ambitious. And he was like, kicked me in the butt and said, get out of here. And he gave me one of his paintings that I still have and love, and I have it hanging over my desk. And he gave me a book of Chuang Tzu poems, Chuang Tzu, an ancient poet. And there's a poem in there that talks to this. There's a frog and a millipede. The millipede is walking down the road, and the frog encounters this millipede, and the frog says, wow, how do you walk with all those legs? And the millipede flips over on his back and says, you should never ask a millipede that question. That's the best I can do.
Thanks, John.
Thank you.